Welcome to Applaud Tutorials. In this tutorial, we take you through a best practice approval process using the workflow approval action. First, consider why you might need an approval process. In our example, we've created a process by adapting components and functionality from the job board template. When a user submits a vacancy using the Post a New Vacancy form, it triggers a workflow that requires approval. First from the HR Director, then the CEO. Its journey through the approval process is trackable through a list block with a stepper. To complete this tutorial, you need a basic understanding of models, workflows, pages, list blocks, and detailed blocks. If you need a refresher, check out the links to some handy resources in the description. To make your approval process trackable for your users, you need to add some properties to your model before you begin your workflow, the most important being the step counter. We use this property to inform the workflow how far along the stepper should be at any given time. Then add Boolean properties for the steps you need. This is because they can be set to true when you reach that step and false when you're not at that step. In this example, we have vacancy submitted, awaiting HR approval, awaiting CEO approval, approved, and rejected. Then create a list block related to your model. In this example, we're hosting the form on a new page for vacancy approvals. We've used the row layout and selected chips and stepper from the features list. This helps to identify the progress of the vacancy's approval journey. We're focusing on the elements specifically relating to the approval process, but feel free to check out the rest of our configuration if you're looking for inspiration. Under Chips, select your Boolean properties from the property field. Select is true for condition. This means that the text, icon, and colour you select will only display when you reach that step. Check out a few of our examples here. Under Stepper, enter titles for your steps. In our example, we've used the names from our Boolean properties. Our property for rejected was created for a chip only. You're now ready to create your workflow. Give your workflow a meaningful title, choose your trigger, and configure any conditions you want to apply. We configured ours to trigger on the Create New Vacancy form. Use the Set Property action to set your step counter property to the appropriate value. In our example, that's awaiting HR approval, so that's step 2. To assign the correct chip to your list block, use the Set Property action to set your Boolean awaiting HR approval property to true. To ensure your chips work as expected, set all other chip properties to false. Now we need to locate the appropriate approver. In this case, we needed to find the employee with the HR Director job title. To do this, we use the Retrieve Information action and selected the person model from the person model template. In conditions, we narrowed it down to HR Director only, so the action only pulls that data. The next action is approval. We've set the approver as the HR Director who we just retrieved. Enter a title for your approval. This will also be the title in the email that the approver receives. Notes will be the approval task body and the email body. We encourage you to use dynamic content to personalize the approval process for your users. The inbuilt approval action uses a simple approve, reject, return format. So we're adding a secondary action to open a custom vacancy detail page from the approval task directly. This page uses detail blocks to display the vacancy information. This is like the vacancy detail page from the template without action buttons. Ensure that you select the triggering instance in the page instance field so the right vacancy is linked to your approval. Optionally, add a due date. In this example, we're skipping this step. You could also create a more in-depth, user-focused approval process by using the task action alongside custom pages and forms. If you're feeling confident and want to try that, check out our video Creating an Approval Process with the Workflow Task Action. Under Approve, set the step counter and Boolean properties to their relevant values, as you did with the actions before the approval. If your step counter was previously at 2, it should now go to 3. In our example, our tracking is moving to step 3 with the awaiting CEO approval chip set to true. Then retrieve the relevant person for your next layer of approval. In our example, that's the CEO. Follow the same steps as you did for the first layer. Then, when ready, repeat the set property actions for your step counter and Boolean properties. In this case, we're changing the approved Boolean property to true and the step counter to 4, the final step. You can also use your step counter and Boolean properties to move back on the stepper if a request is rejected. In our example, we move back to step 1 and set the rejected chip to true. Then, if the hiring manager checks the vacancy approvals list, they can see theirs was submitted but ultimately rejected. Alternatively, leave the step counter where it is in the workflow and just change the chip. We encourage you to play around with the reject branch routes, including setting the step counter and adding additional tasks, until you find what's right for your organisation. Now that we're finished, let's take you through a vacancies approval journey. In this example, we've updated the vacancy approvals page to make it more user-friendly. Congratulations, you successfully completed this tutorial. Learn more at Applaud Academy or check out our knowledge base at support.applaudsolutions.com.